Bitcoin and crypto continues pulling back today. We're going to explore some scenarios where Bitcoin is likely to bottom because Bitcoin is the driver of this crypto market. So you want to be rooting for it. If it continues tanking, that will drag down quite a bit of these altcoins here. This is why I talk about Bitcoin first things first, no matter what. I never trade altcoins without a clear understanding of the Bitcoin charts. Now, what I'm seeing here is a chart that I've been pointing out to you guys for as long as I can remember now. This is the weekly time frame for Bitcoin, and it has broken down from this rising wedge pattern, which is a bearish pattern that has a higher chance of breaking to the downside. You guys got to recognize these patterns as this bull cycle continues, and I very much think this bull cycle is going to continue after we form a bottom here. And where do I think is a very possible bottom? Let's explore that scenario here. Let me finish talking about this real quick because this is very important. This is the weekly 50 SMA, currently sitting at about 103,000. I talked about that major moving average and how the chances of Bitcoin holding above that moving average is pretty slim. And now we have actually gotten a solid candle close below that as of last week's weekly candle. So, what are we looking at right now? What am I looking at right now? Is going to be the monthly 21 SMA. Monthly 21 SMA, I do think this is going to be a very likely bottom, and here is why. You see, Bitcoin has not even touched down on this monthly 21 SMA during this entire trend since October of 2023. If you guys been around since October of 2023, which was not that long ago, right? It's just 2 years, right? And that was a pretty crazy time from October to March of 2024, which was last year. And since then, things have not been as smooth. Okay, I've been here since then. I've seen a lot more twists and turns since March of 2024. But my point is, Bitcoin has not touched down to this monthly 21 SMA that's currently sitting at about 87.5 the entire time during this trend. And when you hit a support like that for the first time, I do expect it to be very strong support. So this is why I think that is a very possible bottom for Bitcoin. However, could Bitcoin come down to even 80,000? That is still possible because when you see a moving average, it's not going to hit the moving average at the exact point before getting support or resistance. So it is possible Bitcoin comes all the way down to 80,000 as well. That is also the breakdown target of that rise and wedge pattern, okay, about 80,000. So that is something to be considering as well, that I'll be considering as well. Now, I am long on quite a bit of these altcoins here, especially for the longer term. Okay, I'll tell you guys when I change my opinion. But of course, these are just my opinions, like the entirety of this video, and it's not financial advice. You guys gotta form your own opinions and strategies. I'm just telling you guys what I am doing personally, okay? I don't guarantee anything, but I have been in this market for 5+ years. I think that beats the statistics, okay, of the average trader. Let's take a look into the daily time frame. Daily time frame here. I talked about this yesterday. How this could be I talked about this bottom trend line here of this falling wedge pattern that has broken to the downside. Okay, falling wedges usually break to the upside, right? However, this broke down and the bottom trend line is now going to be your resistance. Now, could Bitcoin actually break back into this pattern? That would be very good to see. However, the 3-day time frame is the time frame that you want to be looking at. If Bitcoin actually breaks back into this pattern, we could get some short-term upside, right? So 3-day time frame is the time frame you want to be looking at. That's going to be ending in about 6 hours. If not, then this bottom trend line is going to continue to be a resistance. We can even take a look into a shorter time frame where it looks like this smaller falling wedge pattern could still be valid. No, I'm wrong. That's not a valid smaller falling wedge pattern here anymore, because the highest time frame this pattern is validated in is on the 6 hour. So, going to be looking at something like this. I am looking for a potential hedge to short Bitcoin. It's going to be a smaller short position with a very short stop to hedge against my long positions. I'm looking at potentially this bottom trend line again if it comes back to retest it. Now I'm just really trying to create a win-win situation for myself, because this bottom trend line, if Bitcoin is actually able to break back above it with the 3-day candle close, that's going to be very good, at least in the short term. If it doesn't, then we are going to see more downside. So that's why I'm looking for a possible hedge with some shorter time frame confirmation. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the news before diving into some altcoin setups. Okay, we're going to be talking about Velo. We're going to be talking about Mina. We're also going to be talking about the third one is Verasity. Okay, see what's happening with some of these coins later in this video. What has their trading setups changed? Has their price targets changed? Let's get into some news first. There's not that much news today. Okay, this one is by Dow Jones Newswire. Strategy stock is falling, but it bought more Bitcoin anyways. Barons.com. So I guess the headline says it all. Let's see, how much did he buy? In a Form 8K filed with the SEC on Monday, the company disclosed it has snapped up over 8,000 Bitcoin for an average price of 102,000 ish, or around $835 million in total in the period between November 10th and Sunday. So Strategy has been buying. Okay, this brings Strategy's Bitcoin hoard to almost 650,000 tokens. Wow, that is pretty crazy. Okay, so it's good to hear that other bulls are still doing the same things and echoing the same opinions. I would not let them form my opinions in the first place, but I think after forming your opinions and hearing echoes of others, I think that's good to know, right? I also like to hear what the other side's opinions are, like the bears' opinions, and see if they make sense. Okay, I still think the bullish opinion makes more sense here. And I've been making the arguments why, one of which is that the Federal Reserve has started its Fed rate cut cycle back in September. Looks like they might be taking a pause for December, but I don't think it's going to be as long a pause as we have seen in 2025. All right, next here is by Cointelegraph. Young Bitcoin holders panic sell 148,000 Bitcoin as analysts call for sub 90,000 Bitcoin bottom. What is the key takeaway here? Newer Bitcoin investors sold over 148,000 at a loss on November 14th. Analysts agree that pushing Bitcoin's price below the January 1st open at 93,000 could trigger a fresh downtrend to areas below 90,000. Okay. Bitcoin's weekends realized losses. Okay. Now I don't know what all this is, but yeah, I mean, I do think we are very close to a bottom. All right, let's come back to altcoin setups. We're going to be taking a look into Velo first and see what's happening with Velo. Now, it's important to note that I have invalidated some charts on these coins because they have either been invalidated or the price targets have been met. You guys can reference my previous videos for the previous patterns. Now, I talked about Velo here. There was a falling wedge pattern. Falling wedges have a higher chance of breaking to the upside. However, Velo actually broke to the downside here, and the confirmation is here. Let me make sure on the monthly time frame, actually, the monthly time frame, it is still valid. Okay, on the monthly time frame, this falling wedge is still valid. So this weekly time frame here, even though it has gotten weekly candle closes below this falling wedge pattern, it does not invalidate this falling wedge pattern because the highest time frame it's validated on is on the monthly time frame. So let's see what Velo does here. Excuse me. Daily time frame, falling wedge pattern. Looks like it's trying to break out of here. Okay, if this breakout is successful, price target is going to be about, if it breaks out by today, price target is going to be about 1.25 cents Velo, which is still a pretty significant move. Let's see if this happens. Okay, there is quite a bit of bullish signals that could be playing out right now, including bullish divergence on the daily RSI. Let's go ahead and go to Verasity, see what's happening with Verasity. All right, Verasity here. I talked about a huge falling wedge pattern on the weekly time frame. Broke out of it way back in August. It is still a valid pattern because the price action is still above the upper trend line of the pattern. Okay. So this breakout is still valid. The price target is still 1.5 cents price targets for VRA. Now, I did talk about VRA forming a smaller falling wedge pattern here from between within the bigger falling wedge pattern and after the breakouts. Okay, let's just say I'm gonna move this measure move along this upper trend line here just to give it more time for the estimated breakouts. Price target out of the smaller falling wedge pattern is going to be about 0.25 cents price targets. Now, these price targets are estimates only. There could be more, there could be less. In the case of these altcoins, a lot of which is going to depend on what happens with Bitcoin. If Bitcoin starts dumping from here, especially extensively, that could tank these altcoin setups. Okay, so very important to be paying attention to Bitcoin first. Now, if it breaks out by this point, for example, price target is going to be about 0.25 cents. And even though these technical analysis patterns have a higher chance of breaking in one direction, also have to mind the lower chance of breaking to the other direction. We're all just talking about probabilities here. Nothing in this market is 100%. Let's take a look into the daily time frame where I talked about a falling wedge pattern. This one tried to break out. It did not meet its price targets and then basically flopped. So this is one of these scenarios you got to be considering. All right, so what could Velo be doing now? Let's see if we can rechart this pattern. And give us a new pattern here, because when patterns get invalidated, you rechart the pattern. This is another falling wedge pattern here. Probably more validated on a smaller time frame. I'm looking for 3 candle touches on a trend line. Even a smaller time frame. Okay, we don't have exactly 3 candle touching on the upper trend line, but I think it's close enough. Okay. So I'm going to call this a falling wedge pattern because we have the shape, even though not exactly 3 candles on the upper trend line. Now, if this pattern breaks out to the upside by this point, for example, price target would be about 0.00093. Let's see if that's what it does. Okay. Let's take a look into Mina and see what's happening with this coin here. Talked about Mina with you guys a couple of days ago. falling wedge pattern. Not exactly 3 candles touching on the upward trend line, but I think it's, well, actually, it's close enough. We already have 3 candles touching based on this bottom section here. So, falling wedge pattern, price target, if it breaks out by this week, for example, price target will be about $1.55. Let's see if it could break out sometime soon, because this falling wedge pattern is tightening. Okay, that can at least give you a pretty good estimate of a possible move. Okay. Now let's zoom in on Mina timeframes and see if I can get any clues on what could this coin be doing. Daily time frame, no particular pattern. It is trying to get on top of the daily 200 SMA at about 18 cents. Potential double bottom? No, I don't see it actually. This is a falling wedge pattern that has broken to the upside. Okay. And the price target for this falling wedge pattern, very small one, is going to be about 16 cents. So this is basically what I'm seeing for VRA, Velo, Mina. Let me know if you guys want to continue seeing any more of these coins or any other coins in this market by dropping a like, comment, subscribe. I'll pick a request to you for you guys on a daily basis, and I'll see you on the next one.